How much is peace really worth when you pull into your driveway and realize someone has just helped themselves to your land, your water, your history, like you don't exist, like you're a line they can erase with a pin and a fake permit? That was the question stuck in my head the afternoon I came home and heard that sound, a low mechanical grinding that didn't belong to birds or wind or boats, but to machines, to intrusion, to trouble. I cut the engine of my truck after an 11-hour drive. It was a Tuesday in early June. The clock on the dash said 3:47 p.m., and all I wanted was a shower and the quiet of the woods my grandfather planted. But instead I followed that noise down the dirt path and walked straight into a war over 8 acres of water. My name is Cole Harper. I'm a hydrological engineer by trade, which means I live in maps and numbers and boundary lines. And when I turned 30, my grandfather James Harper left me everything out here: the cabin, 46 acres of pine and maple, and the lake everyone in town still calls Harper Lake. 8 acres of spring-fed water, fully surveyed, fully taxed, locked into county records since 1987 as mine, and very intentionally sitting outside the lines of the nearby subdivision, a place called Silverbrook Ridge, run by Silverbrook Ridge HOA, a separate little kingdom I never signed up for. But when I stepped out of the trees that day, there it was, a full construction crew in hard hats building what looked like a yacht dock straight out of a resort brochure, 60 feet pushing out into my lake, 30 feet wide, steel pilings driven into the lake bed, pressure-treated lumber stacked like cordwood, a small excavator carving deep ruts into the grass my grandfather seeded by hand. This wasn't kids fooling around with a pallet. This was a serious structure being built with serious money on my land, without so much as a knock on the cabin door. And then I heard her. "Can I help you?" she called, like I was the one trespassing. I turned and saw a woman in her mid-50s walking toward me, gray hair pinned back, so tight it looked like it hurt, navy blazer in the heat, clipboard in one hand, phone in the other, that bored, practiced expression of someone who's used to people backing down when she speaks. She introduced herself as Marla Whitfield, president of Silverbrook Ridge HOA. And when I pointed at the dock and asked what was going on, she barely glanced over her shoulder before reciting the line she'd clearly rehearsed. "This is a community improvement project," she said, "a shared amenity dock for residents and guests, approved by the board 3 months ago." I kept my voice calm, because the loudest guy never wins. "This," I told her, "is my shoreline, on my deed, outside your HOA boundaries." I pulled up the 1987 survey map on my phone, county stamps, GPS coordinates, everything. "Your board doesn't get to approve anything here." She didn't even look at it. She just smiled, no warmth, just power, and said their HOA maps showed the lake as common area, that they had legal documentation, that if I had questions I could submit them in writing at the next meeting like a good little resident. Then she turned her back on me and told the crew to keep going. And when I told her I was ordering them to stop construction on my property, she paused just long enough to threaten me. "If you interfere with approved community projects," she said, "we'll issue violation notices. That's $500 a day." Then she waved to 2 guys in reflective vests and told them security was on site if they needed to escort this gentleman off. I could have shouted. I could have grabbed a post, started ripping things apart. But that's how you lose. That's how they paint you crazy. Instead, I stepped back and did the one thing people like Marla Whitfield never expect. I started documenting wide shots of the dock, close-ups of the pilings, a clear photo of the permit taped to a post. It had a reference number, a contractor name, a scribbled signature, but no county seal. Nothing official. I photographed everything. Then I walked back, up to the cabin, pulled the original deed of trust from the glove box, verified the coordinates for the 10th time, and sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, listening to the sound of a stranger's dock being built on my grandfather's lake. By the time I reached the main road, I had already called Graham Ellis, the property attorney who handled my grandfather's estate, left him a message that someone was building a yacht dock on my land and claiming it was HOA property, told him I needed every document we'd ever filed. Then I drove straight to the Harrison County Recorder's office, pulled permits for every construction project in the area over the last 6 months, and sat in my truck flipping through the stack. There was nothing. For a dock on my parcel, no excavation permit, nothing matching the number on that paper by the water. But the signature on the fake permit, that loopy, self-important scrawl, I'd seen that before, on an old landscaping notice from Silverbrook Ridge HOA, signed by President Marla Whitfield. The next morning, at 6:32 a.m., the email hit my inbox, subject line: Notice of violation, Silverbrook Ridge HOA. According to Marla, I had obstructed an approved community project on June 14th, and under some article and section of their documents I'd never agreed to, she was fining me $500 a day until compliance, threatening additional legal action. If I didn't pay, I forwarded it to Graham Ellis with one line: They're fining me for standing on my own land. He called back within the hour, voice in that careful neutral gear that lawyers use when they're furious. He told me what I already knew in my gut. My deed was ironclad. The boundary survey from 1987 lined up perfectly with current GIS maps. The lake and the strip of shoreline in question were 100% mine, never part of the HOA. There was no legitimate permit on file for that dock, which meant the paper they'd taped up was fraudulent. We send a cease and desist today, he said. Certified mail. They are legally obligated to stop. If they don't, we go for an injunction and then civil court. The letter went out that afternoon, but Marla didn't wait for it. That evening she called an emergency board meeting, emailed all 42 households in Silverbrook Ridge, not to invite me, but to put me on trial in absentia. I didn't find out until the next day when my neighbor, Mark Dalton, knocked on my cabin door, couldn't quite meet my eyes, shifting from foot to foot while he explained how Marla had stood up in front of the room and told everyone I'd been hoarding the lake for myself for years, that the dock was funded by outside donors for the good of the community, that I was sabotaging property values out of selfishness. She passed around a petition, promised rising home prices and extra revenue. 37 households signed. Some were already talking about boycotting my consulting business. I didn't sign, Mark said, but I thought you should know what she's saying. That night, around 11:15, my phone rang. Unknown number, a man's voice, low, rough. The community doesn't want you here. Stop making trouble. Walk away while you still can. Then he hung up. No threats on paper this time, just fear. Instead of yelling back, I built a file. I compiled everything into a single digital folder: tax receipts, the original land grant, the survey map, photos of the fake permit, Graham's letter, Marla's violation notice, a 23-page timeline. Then I went back to that permit number, ran it through the county database, and watched as it popped up, not as a dock, not even on my road, but as a pedestrian bridge from 6 years earlier on a road 12 miles away. A permit that had expired 2 years ago. Marla had literally copied an old number off a dead project and slapped it on my shoreline. When I told Graham, he didn't hesitate. That's falsifying a public document, he said. You call the county building inspector right now. So I did. 2 days later, Noah Briggs, the Harrison County building inspector, met me at the cabin and walked down to the lake with a GPS unit, a clipboard, and a camera. He didn't say much, just studied the dock in silence, took pictures, measured distances, then made a call in front of me, confirmed with the office that there was no active permit for my parcel, confirmed that the number on the post belonged to a long-closed project. Then he pulled a red tag from his bag, stapled it over Marla's fake permit, and read the words that finally felt like someone else saw what I was seeing. Stop work order, he said. Anyone who continues construction after this can be fined and charged. I'm forwarding this to the county prosecutor. It would have been enough for a normal person to back down, but Marla Whitfield wasn't normal. She was greedy. I started pulling Silverbrook Ridge HOA's financial records. They're public if you know where to look, buried in the county offices and on badly designed websites. In 2025, they collected around $12,000 in dues, standard stuff for landscaping and snow removal. But there was a line in March that made my stomach flip, a withdrawal of $35,300 from a community improvement reserve. No itemized breakdown, just a note that the board had approved it. When I pulled the minutes from that meeting, they referenced infrastructure improvements. No specifics, 37 yes votes, 5 no. Then I looked up Marla herself. Under business registrations for Harrison County, there it was, Whitfield Lakeside Retreats LLC, formed in 2023, Marla as majority owner, description, short-term luxury rental properties and event hosting. 9 villas inside Silverbrook Ridge, all managed by her, rates between $1,200 and $2,500 a night, and front and center on her website. glossy photos of lake views with the caption, "Coming soon, exclusive dock access for guests, my lake," her marketing hook. That was the motive. She wasn't building a community dock. She was building a commercial amenity with other people's dues, on land she didn't own, backed by a fake permit and a smear campaign. From there, the case built itself. Graham told me civil litigation lives or dies on documentation. So I turned my anger into a checklist. I hired Summit Line Surveys out of Knoxville, and their lead surveyor, Evan Miles, walked my boundary with a high-precision GPS, came back with a certified report showing the dock sitting 47 feet inside my property line. I hired a drone pilot to get aerial photos. High-res images with timestamps showing the structure, the disturbed shoreline, the red stopwork tag. I brought in an environmental firm to test the water. Their report showed sediment near the construction up 30+% from baseline, potential violations of state water quality laws. At the same time, I went to see Roy Baxter, who owns the local hardware and marine supply store. Asked if he had invoices for the dock materials. After some hesitation, he handed over a folder. The invoice showed an order for $47,300 in steel and lumber, paid in full by cashier's check, billed to Silverbrook Ridge HOA, and signed by Marla. But the HOA budget only acknowledged $12,000 for the whole project, meaning the rest had been quietly siphoned from reserves without clear disclosure. I added it all to a binder, 300+ pages, every document indexed and cross-referenced, one copy for me, one for Graham, one for the courthouse. Then we filed the lawsuit in Harrison County Circuit Court named Silverbrook Ridge HOA and Marla Whitfield personally. We asked for injunctive relief, demolition of the dock at their expense, damages for trespass and environmental harm, legal fees, a permanent injunction barring them from my land, and a forfeiture clause if they failed to remove the dock within 30 days of the order. Ownership of the structure and all materials would transfer to me. 3 hours after the filing hit the public docket, my phone rang again. This time it was Tessa Monroe, a reporter with the Tri-County Ledger. She'd been tracking HOA abuse cases for years, and the keywords in my case lit up her dashboard. We met at a coffee shop. I handed her a drive with the full documentation. She read until her coffee went cold, asked careful questions, then said, "This is airtight." She lied to the board, falsified a permit, built a commercial dock on private property using misappropriated funds. People need to see this. Her article went live 3 days later under the headline, HOA president accused of building $47,000 yacht dock on private lake to boost rental empire. With a subhead about the county's fraud investigation, it included drone photos of the dock with the red tag visible, quotes from Noah Briggs, the financial discrepancy, the website screenshot of Whitfield Lakeside Retreats bragging about exclusive dock access. Attempts to contact Marla for comment had no response. By the next day, it was everywhere, shared in local groups, texted between neighbors, posted with captions like, "This is our HOA." People who had signed Marla's petition started emailing the board to withdraw their support. Mark Dalton came by again, this time to apologize. More than a dozen homeowners filed formal complaints demanding Marla's resignation. An emergency meeting was called, and this time, the target wasn't me, it was her. I wasn't in that room, but Mark was, and he told me later how it went, how the questions came one after another. Why was reserve money used without details? Why was the dock on clearly private land? Why was there no valid permit? How Marla tried to talk about disputed boundaries and good faith. How someone stood up and started reading lines from Tessa's article. How the room turned all at once, and then, right at the breaking point, how Noah Briggs walked in, still in his county vest, and, when asked point-blank, said in front of everyone that the permit was fake, the project unpermitted, and the case already in the hands of prosecutors. After that, there was nothing left for Marla to say. She picked up her clipboard, walked out of the clubhouse, and didn't come back. By Monday, she'd resigned as HOA president. Silverbrook Ridge HOA issued a public apology and hired a forensic accountant. Her rental company lost contracts. Her website went dark and out on Harper Lake. The dock sat frozen in place, wrapped in silence and a fading red tag, waiting for the court. The hearing itself was almost disappointingly short. In front of Judge Elaine Rockwell, a woman with steel in her hair and zero tolerance for nonsense, Graham laid everything out. The survey showing the dock well inside my property line, the stop work order, the invoices from Roy Baxter, the falsified permit number from an old bridge project, the email where Marla had once tried to buy the lake from me for $180,000, proving she knew exactly who owned it. Marla's lawyer tried to argue historic community use and good faith reliance on board procedures. But when Graham pointed out that good faith doesn't include recycling permit numbers and hiding 40 grand from your own members, the judge's expression chilled a few degrees. In the end, she didn't raise her voice. She just read her ruling into the record, stating that the dock was an unauthorized commercial structure built on private land without consent, without a valid permit, with misused HOA funds, that it was a continuing trespass and a product of fraud. She ordered Silverbrook Ridge HOA and Marla Whitfield to remove the dock and every related piece of equipment from my property within 30 days at their expense, to pay me $127,000 in damages and legal costs, and imposed a permanent injunction. If they failed to remove the structure in time, ownership of all materials would pass to me. 30 days came and went. No crews arrived, no apology, no attempt at demolition. The dock just sat there, taking up space on a lake it didn't belong to. So Graham filed to execute the forfeiture clause. Judge Rockwell signed it. And in one afternoon, the yacht dock that had been built to impress tourists quietly became my property. On August 11th, a demolition contractor named Leo Carter rolled up with a crew and a crane. We made a deal. He could keep the scrap if he knocked the price down. And for 4 days I stood on my porch and watched them undo what Marla had tried to carve into my life. Board by board, piling by piling, they cut the beams, pulled the steel out of the lake bed, hauled it away on flatbeds. By Wednesday, the dock was gone. Leo handed me a check for scrap profits, $8,400, smiled, and said, "Funny thing about bad builds, they pay twice." I kept one piece. One steel piling, 8 feet tall, the same one that had held Noah's red stop work order. I had Leo leave it in the ground near the shore. Later I cleaned it up and bolted a small plaque to it. Built without permission, taken by law. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Because while the shoreline was healing, Marla's world was collapsing. Harrison County filed criminal charges against her for falsifying public documents, theft of services, and criminal trespass with intent to profit. 8 homeowners from Silverbrook Ridge filed a class action suit over misused funds. The audit found more money missing, over $58,000 in unexplained withdrawals and vendor payments. Tied back to her rental business, Whitfield Lakeside REITs folded. She sold off villas at a loss, moved out of state, and the state real estate board banned her from fiduciary roles for a decade. 6 months after the court ruling, Harper Lake looked the way it was supposed to. The scars on the bank were gone. I'd used part of the settlement to restore the shoreline and build a small fishing dock, 12 by 8, 1 bench, a solar light, fully permitted, inspected and signed off by Noah Briggs himself. Every step done the right way, the long way. Somewhere along the line, Tessa Monroe won an award for her coverage. Judge Rockwell's ruling started popping up in other cases as precedent. Lawyers from other states called to ask how I'd built my file, what I'd learned about fighting power with paper instead of volume. Strangers messaged me about their own HOA nightmares, asking where to start, and my answer was always the same. Document everything, get a survey. Know your boundary, don't scream, just build the case. Now, when I walk down to the water in the evenings, I pass that steel piling with the plaque, and I think about how close I came to doing the easy thing, taking the fine, letting the dock stay, telling myself it wasn't worth the fight. And I'm glad I didn't, not because I won, but because the line held, the one between what's yours and what someone in a blazer thinks they can take. So that's my story. I got my leg back, not with fists, not with threats, but with patience, evidence, and a system that, for once, did what it was supposed to do. But now I'm curious about you. If you were standing where I stood, watching strangers build a luxury dock on your family's land, with an HOA president calling it community improvement, and threatening to bleed you dry with fines, what would you have done? Would you have walked away for the sake of peace? Or would you have pushed back and risked becoming the problem neighbor? Where do you think the line is between community and control, between authority and abuse, between keeping the peace and standing up for what's right?